Last Monday morning, I was waiting for my usual 7:15 bus to work when something strange happened. A woman I'd never seen before walked up to me. She looked mid-50s, professional, in a long wool coat. She stood there silently for a few moments before saying, very clearly, "Your wife goes to the Riverside Motel every Tuesday afternoon, room 204, at 2:05 p.m. Then she just turned and walked off, got into a silver sedan, and drove away. I stood there stunned, holding my coffee, wondering what in the world had just happened. My wife, Natalie, 36, had a standing Tuesday book club for the past year at her friend Melissa's place. Supposedly, they drank wine and talked about novels I'd never want to read. My rational brain told me not to believe a word. It could have been a mistake, or some random busybody trying to stir up trouble. But the way she spoke, the exact details, the motel, the room number, the time, those were not things someone blurts out without reason. Tuesday came. Natalie packed up her famous spinach dip, kissed me goodbye, and said she was heading to Melissa's. I pretended everything was normal, but instead of going to work, I called in sick and drove to the Riverside Motel. It's one of those by-the-hour types, trying desperately to look respectable. I parked across the street around 1:45 p.m. and waited. At 2:07, her blue Honda pulled in. She didn't even check in at the office, she had a key, and went straight to room 204. My stomach dropped. Then, at 2:29, a white BMW pulled up. Out walked Bradley, her co-worker from the marketing firm. The same Bradley she always dismissed as boring at office functions. Minutes later, a pickup truck arrived. Gary, the landscaper who's been working on our yard for years, strolled in. Then came Dr. Morrison, our dentist. I've trusted that man with my teeth for 5 years. After him, Jeremy, her personal trainer. Then a guy on a motorcycle, helmet on, but the bike was familiar. And finally, an Uber pulled up. Out stepped Mitchell, her ex-boyfriend from college who'd recently moved back into town. 6 men, one after the other. Each one walked confidently into room 204, as if they belonged there. I sat there, numb, snapping photos on my phone like some half-crazed detective. By 4 o'clock they started trickling out one at a time, spaced apart. Natalie emerged last at 4:58. Hair slightly messy despite her attempts to fix it. When she came home that evening, she was all sunshine. Dinner on the stove, cheerful chatter about her book club, joking about how I'd hate their latest feminist novel. She kissed me like nothing had happened. For the past several days, I've been digging into our finances, contacting lawyers, and trying to decide what comes next. But one thing I couldn't let go of was the woman at the bus stop. Who was she, and how did she know? 2 weeks later, I found her. Her name is Denise, Mitchell's wife. She had been suspicious of her husband's client meetings every Tuesday, so she followed him and uncovered the whole disgusting circus at the motel. She kept records, photos, videos, and when she realized Natalie was one of the ringleaders, she dug deeper and discovered me. She told me over coffee that she hadn't planned on saying anything at first. But when she saw me at the bus stop, looking so unsuspecting, she thought about how much she wished someone had warned her earlier. That's when she decided I deserved to know. She's agreed to share her evidence with my lawyer and testify if needed. Which brings me to the part no one will believe unless they heard it themselves. Because I had to know exactly what was going on behind that door. I rented room 203, right next to Natalie's little kingdom. The walls are paper thin. What I heard shocked me more than anything else. They weren't just in there for sex. They were playing Dungeons and Dragons. I could hear my wife running an entire campaign. Dice rolls, monster voices, narrating quests, the whole thing. She'd created some fantasy world where she was a queen, and all 6 men were her knights. But it wasn't all dragons and dungeons. Between battles and treasure hunts, there were plenty of other activities, intimate ones, with sound effects I'll never unhear. I recorded 3 hours of audio that captured the bizarre mix of fantasy roleplay and betrayal. My lawyer confirmed it's admissible in court, since I rented the neighboring room legally. That night, Natalie came home again with her usual cheerful mask, chatting about book club, like she hadn't just been living out some medieval fantasy with half the men in our lives. And I sat there, nodding, while quietly preparing to end this marriage for good. That I walked into the kitchen, and found Natalie humming to herself, happily chopping fruit like everything in our marriage was perfectly fine. She was blending her post-book club smoothie, completely oblivious to the storm brewing. How was book club? I asked casually. Oh, amazing, she said with a smile. We had such a deep discussion about character development. Honestly, it was so intellectually stimulating. I almost laughed right there but held it in. By the next morning, I was done. I filed for divorce. Friday afternoon, the papers were delivered to her at work, right in front of Bradley, her Tuesday night companion. The look on their faces was pure perfection. That night, she came home absolutely livid. Not ashamed. Not guilty. Livid. She stormed in demanding. How dare you embarrass me like that at work? Do you have any idea how this looks? I just stared at her. How it looks? Natalie, you've been cheating on me with 6 different men. It's not cheating, she snapped. She actually stomped her foot like a child. It's a creative outlet. It's a safe space for adult roleplay. You'd never understand because you don't have any imagination. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. You're sleeping with 6 men every Tuesday, I said. She waved it off. It's part of the narrative. God, you're so vanilla. This is why I needed this. You never want to try anything new. You've never once played a bard for me. I swear I am not exaggerating. She really tried to blame her motel escapades on the fact that I wouldn't act out her fantasy scenarios. Then she had the nerve to demand that I move out immediately because, in her words, the DM needs her space to create. When I laughed in her face, she threatened to call the police and accuse me of abuse. That's when I calmly told her. I have recordings, Natalie. 3 hours worth. Her face drained of color. You what? Room 203, I said. Thin walls. That's when she started to crumble, bargaining, crying, raging, bargaining again. It was like watching her speedrun the stages of grief. And then came the piece de resistance, her official divorce demands. She wanted the house because it was where she hosted game night. She wanted alimony to maintain her creative lifestyle. Half my 401k. The good car. A written apology for violating her privacy. An NDA to protect her private creative group. And joint custody of our dog. We don't even own a dog. When my lawyer read the list, he actually laughed. Said in 30 years of practice, it was the most delusional request he'd ever seen. But Natalie wasn't done. She took to social media, painting me as some oppressive husband who was stifling her creativity and punishing her for having hobbies. Her mom even called me, screaming that I was destroying her daughter's artistic spirit. And then the real fallout started. Turns out Denise had been busy. One by one, the other wives and partners found out. Dr. Morrison's wife stormed into his office and threw his diplomas out the window. Bradley's fiancé canceled their wedding on the spot. Gary's wife changed the locks and spray-painted cheater across his truck. Jeremy's boyfriend, yes, apparently Jeremy had been experimenting, dumped him via Instagram story. The motorcycle guy? Turned out he was Natalie's cousin, and his wife torched his bike in the driveway. The chain reaction of divorces and breakups was so explosive that the local motel had to issue a public statement distancing themselves from what everyone now called the Tuesday Club. And still, Natalie played the victim. Still insisted she had done nothing wrong. Still claimed this was all about creative expression, found family, and pushing boundaries in a safe space. She moved back in with her mother, who enabled her completely. I got 12 emails in one day. All about how I was crushing her spirit and punishing her for being different. Court finally arrived 3 weeks later. And Natalie, she showed up in full Renaissance fair attire. Corset, flowing skirts, even a tiara. Her lawyer looked like he wanted to vanish into thin air. She carried binders of character sheets and actually tried to present them as evidence. Her argument? That her motel meetups were performance art. She told the judge with a straight face that she was exploring the boundaries of modern relationships through medieval fantasy paradigms. The judge, an older woman who looked like she had seen it all, just stared at her over her glasses. Ma'am, are you seriously trying to tell me that adultery is performance art? It's not adultery, Natalie insisted. It's collaborative storytelling with intimate elements. Even her own lawyer looked ready to quit. Then Denise took the stand, armed with photos, videos, timestamps. Other wives testified next. The motel manager provided security footage of all 7 of them walking into room 203. My recordings were submitted privately. And the kicker? Remember the motorcycle guy, her cousin? His wife testified too. Not only did she expose the affair, she also revealed that Natalie had been bragging about her so-called kingdom in family group chats. Yes, family group chats. She had been sending her cousins and siblings detailed updates about her quests and conquests like it was some kind of twisted Dungeons and Dragons campaign. By the end, the case was an absolute blowout. My lawyer called it the easiest win of his career. Natalie's creative expression defense went up in flames, and all she managed to accomplish was destroying her own reputation and half a dozen relationships in the process. And that, thankfully, was the end of the saga. Everyone thought Natalie had just gotten way too deep into some fantasy game online. She kept talking about her knights, her conquests, and her noble champion Sir Garrett the Bold. Most of us assumed she was role-playing with strangers on the internet. Then my cousin's wife pieced it together and realized Sir Garrett was actually me, her real-life husband, and all the knights were men from her so-called book club. The texts came into court as evidence. Gems included lines like, "Another kingdom falls before me, the queen is unbeaten, and my loyal knights fought bravely for my favor. Bradley the persistent has earned special rewards." There were even urgent summons like, "Emergency quest on Tuesday, the realm requires attention." Her entire family was in the courtroom when this came out. Her dad stormed out. Her sister broke down in tears. Her mom just kept repeating, "It's just creative writing, it's just creative writing," like she was stuck on a loop. Then Natalie had her chance to speak, and I swear I've never seen entitlement like it. She accused me of emotional terrorism for exposing what she called her found family. She insisted I was intimidated by her power and couldn't handle a woman with imagination. According to her, the motel was her sacred creative sanctuary, and I had desecrated it. She demanded full possession of our house as reparation for creative damages, lifelong alimony because I'd supposedly destroyed her artistic reputation, a public apology printed in the local newspaper, compensation for emotional distress, custody of a dog we never owned, but she claimed we'd agreed to adopt, and her grandmother's ring back, the same one we pawned years earlier to fix her car. The judge glanced at my lawyer. My lawyer gave a helpless shrug. Then the judge looked at her lawyer, who wasn't even paying attention. He was scrolling on his phone, probably already job hunting. The verdict came quickly. Divorce finalized on grounds of adultery. No alimony. Since we live in an at-fault state, she was responsible for my legal fees. The house had to be sold, proceeds split after the mortgage. We each kept our cars. And because she'd started showing up at my workplace dressed as a medieval queen, a restraining order was granted. But Natalie wasn't done. As court wrapped up, she stood dramatically and shouted, "You'll regret this. My knights will avenge their queen." Security escorted her out. The fallout was glorious chaos. The so-called Tuesday Club collapsed overnight. Dr. Morrison lost his medical practice. Bradley got fired after co-workers reported his fantasy roleplay talk in the office. Gary's landscaping company dried up. Jeremy packed up and moved out of state. Mitchell's wife divorced him. My cousin's marriage blew up entirely. Natalie, of course, tried to spin it. She launched a GoFundMe titled, "Support an Artist Persecuted for Unconventional Expression." It raised a whopping $37, all from her mom. On social media, she spiraled. She made a bizarre web series about a queen in exile, filmed herself ranting about small-minded peasants terrified of powerful women, and even started a podcast called The Dungeon Master's Lament. She has, last I checked, 3 subscribers. A few weeks ago, she sent me an actual invitation to her grand return to the kingdom. It was a LARP event in the city park. I skipped it, but word is she showed up in costume, proclaimed herself queen of the playground, and tried to knight random joggers. Someone called the police. That incident was finally the breaking point for her mom, who told her to either get therapy or get a job, and preferably both. As for me, I'm okay. Therapy's been helping. Sold the house, moved into a nice downtown apartment, and joined a bowling league, completely roleplay free. I've started seeing a wonderful woman from work who thinks Dungeons and Dragons is just that game with the funny dice. And honestly, I'm more than fine with that. Denise, who also went through her own divorce thanks to the Tuesday Club, and I are good friends now. We meet for coffee sometimes and laugh at how insane it all was. She came out ahead, kept her house, her BMW, and even snagged Mitchell's 401k. The motel where all this happened leaned into the notoriety. Room 204 now has a plaque calling it the legendary meeting place of the Tuesday Club. They rent it out for bachelor parties and market it as a bizarre tourist stop. Gotta love capitalism. And me? I still take the same 7:15 bus every morning. Sometimes I see the regulars who watch this madness unravel from the sidelines. We give each other a little nod, a shared acknowledgement that we witnessed something truly ridiculous together. Natalie hasn't completely faded away. Last week she actually mailed me an invoice demanding payment for emotional labor and creative consulting, because, in her words, I stole her life story. My lawyer told me to file it under harassment. Some people never change. But at least now, I know exactly what she's doing on Tuesdays. Hopefully filling out job applications instead of conquering imaginary kingdoms. And if life has taught me anything, it's this. If a stranger at the bus stop tells you something oddly specific about your spouse, maybe listen. And if your partner claims they're going to book club, ask them what book. Stay sane out there.